tell you, the single best upgrade I ever made to my setup, a standing desk. For real, with the amount of time I spent at my desk, my back would crumple like tissue paper if I wasn't able to work standing up. Thankfully, this video sponsor, Eureka Ergonomic, hooked me up with the best standing desk money can buy, and if you'd like to grab one for yourself, you can get it for 30% off by clicking the link. Stick around to the end of the video to learn more. Alright, hello. So, a few days ago, I uploaded a special episode of the Friends Per Second podcast. That was one where Jake, Lucy, and I visited Ken Levine's studio, Ghost Story Games. We played Judas for 5 hours, and then we interviewed the man himself for an hour and a half. If you'd like to check out that conversation, I'll leave a link to it below. That was a 2-hour video, and I know a lot of people don't have time for that. It was also interspersed with exclusive new gameplay that we were provided. But again, I know that many people would have listened to that video as a podcast and weren't paying attention to the screen the whole time. So I wanted to make this follow-up video that really clearly and succinctly describes what Judas is and what it was like for us to play it, with specific reference to that new gameplay so that everyone can get a better look at it. I'll also splice in some of the existing gameplay and trailer footage where necessary. If you have already watched the other video, you're not going to find a lot of new information here, so I want to be clear about that. I don't want to waste your time. But if you haven't yet checked that out, and you're looking for a succinct breakdown of what Judas is, then that's what this video is aiming to do. Finally, I'd again reiterate the point that this is not a preview, because a preview is where you can start to critique a game. Judas is not ready for that yet. The studio made very clear to us that the game is still very much in development and many things will change. The purpose of this initial hands-on session and discussion with Ken was to understand what this game is in terms of its structure, its narrative, its core gameplay elements, etc. It's like being invited onto the set of a movie still in production. You can talk about what you saw, but it doesn't make sense to critique it yet. There'll certainly be a time to critically assess the game later on, but this is not that moment. So, with all of that out of the way, what is Judas? Well, obviously, the term Bioshock in space gets thrown around a lot, and some people like to meme on that one because they're like, bro, we already had Bioshock in space. It was called System Shock. And yeah, that's true, but like, Bioshock and System Shock were vastly different games, with Bioshock ripping out a lot of that RPG complexity in an attempt to deliver something more streamlined, more cinematic, more actiony, something with vastly more mass market appeal. That's why I think the term Bioshock in space does apply to Judas, because Judas is much closer to Bioshock than it is to System Shock. So, is Judas Bioshock in space? In part, yeah, absolutely. It has many elements that make it feel like a Bioshock game. The visuals, the story foundations, the lightweight immersive sim combat setup combining powers and guns and hacking. Stepping into the world for the first time, getting to grips with it, it definitely feels familiar, and as I've seen people's reactions to the new gameplay revealed, many people are just like, oh look, Ken Levine made another Bioshock game, only this time it's in space. I understand that response because the things that separate Judas from Bioshock are not so easily seen in gameplay. The things that make Judas unique are its approach to storytelling, the trade-offs that come from siding with one person over another. It's the pseudo-procedural generation that is remaking the space station layout every time you step into it. It's the overall resource economy, which is very focused on judicious management of resources rather than run-and-gun gameplay, and it's the roguelike elements that govern things like your meta progression and unlocks, as well as the meta narrative that kicks in every time you die. That stuff is much harder to see when you're looking at a 3-second snippet of gameplay on Twitter, but that is the stuff that makes Judas, Judas, and it's the stuff that I found most interesting during my 5 hours with the game. So let's talk about all of those elements, the approach to storytelling, the factional forces, those pseudo-procedural elements, the way it feels to move around and fight on board this space station called the Mayflower, and of course the roguelite stuff. Story first. Easily the most familiar aspect of Judas is its story setup. There's a really rich dude who saw the end of the world coming using an AI large language model, and in order to save humanity, he poured all of his wealth into the creation of the Mayflower, an interstellar ark that would safely ferry humanity to a promised land called Proxima. Like previous Bioshock games, the Mayflower is a place that wears its heart on its figurative sleeve. It's filled with posters that promote social engineering and that discourage any sort of dissent. Scattered around, you'll find what are essentially Reddit posts with someone saying something either in support of the mission or critical of it, and subversive messages get downvoted into oblivion, complete with toxic replies. There's one scene we experience which was hinted at in the trailer, where Judas is being publicly shamed, with literal thumbs down being thrown at her while the crowd jeers. the mission to Proxima demanded a new social order, and the environmental storytelling is in no way subtle about communicating what that order entailed. But during the mission, something went very, very wrong, and Judas had something to do with it. As a result, almost all of the people aboard the space station were killed, leaving only 4 alive. Judas, the lawman Tom, the scientist Nefertiti, and a young girl by the name of Hope. This is where your playthrough begins. Judas is painfully reanimated after being killed, and the tutorial segment of the game essentially introduces you to the Big Three, as they're referred to in shorthand. Each of them have their own personalities, but more important, they have their own goals. Tom wants to complete the mission as originally intended, delivering humanity to Proxima, but Nefertiti sees it differently. She's abandoned her human form and is now 100% synthetic, and purged of the imperfections of the flesh, she sees humanity as frail and weak. She wants to reach Proxima too, but she wants to leave her humanity behind.
Flesh was not meant to survive on Proxima.
Now there's still room for you in the mission, Neffy, I swear.
Don't you ever call me that again.
Hope, on the other hand, has a far more nihilistic viewpoint. Disillusioned and broken, Hope just wants it all to be over, begging Judas to kill her and everybody else so they can embrace an eternity of nothingness.
I was so certain I was helping people fix their lives. Fucking moron. Everything I thought was true was just... Honestly, now the only thing I'm looking forward to is nothingness. And when you bring me there, when I see it swimming out to me, I'll let it take me. It's the only way out. Please do this for me, Judas. Help me end this thing.
What's interesting about these 3 people is how much they impact the game's structure and narrative, and this is where we start getting into something called the narrative Lego. This was a GDC talk that Ken Levine gave around a decade ago. It's still worth listening to today, but the crux of it is the idea that game narratives can be more adaptive and flexible if you build them as interchangeable bricks rather than set linear narratives. So rather than the story of a blacksmith who has to help you because that's what the story demands, the blacksmith might hate you because you helped his enemy with something, or maybe the blacksmith likes you because you worship the same god that he does, and maybe he likes you even more because you completed a quest for him, but suddenly he likes you less because you've been labeled an outlaw by the township. At each level of standing, new narrative opportunities either open or close, resulting in this dynamic narrative. It's similar to what we've seen in, for example, Bethesda games, but it was pitched as something more ambitious than what Bethesda games were doing back then. Judas is built in large part on Ken's desire to deliver that idea. The Big Three each represent different branching narratives that respond dynamically based on who you choose to ally yourself with, and the economy of rewards aligned to all of this is intended to pull you this way or that. You may choose to align yourself with Tom, running a few missions for him to curry his favor. Doing so will see him open up a bit, tell you his thoughts on this or that, shed some light on his backstory, maybe some interesting tidbit about how everyone ended up in this mess. At the same time, Nefertiti and Hope are always watching and listening, and one of them might bomb in to tell you something nasty about Tom, something he didn't want you to know. Maybe they'll dangle a tasty weapon or power upgrade in front of you to get you helping them for a while. If all of this comes together as Ken is describing, it's going to result in a narrative that does meaningfully respond to your choices, and that is incentivizing you to question if those choices were the right ones. The other way it manifests is during gameplay. Often the Big Three will help or hinder you based on your standing with them. So in this clip, Hope is showing up out of nowhere to hack a turret and help me out. While in this clip, Tom decides to be a dick, locking a door you were hoping to escape through and trapping you in a room full of deputies. When Ken initially pitched the idea of narrative Legos all those years ago, it was centered on narratives, but as I spoke to him, it dawned on me that his thinking on this stuff had since enlarged to include gameplay elements like level design or combat rhythm, and to deliver on that, he's introduced a degree of procedural generation into Judas. Now to be clear, this is not wholesale procedural generation of levels. Ken and his studio refer to it as pseudo-procedural generation because a lot of work has been done to develop curated elements that the procedural engine can utilize in different ways, with the overall intent of spaces still feeling handcrafted. What does this tangibly mean? Well, after the tutorial segment, you'll meet Scuddy, a giant robot dog who is a very good boy, and he's also your way of getting around the Mayflower space station. You literally climb into his big head, and when you do that, an overworld map appears, and you move him to different locations, and after a very quick loading sequence, you arrive at your new destination. These destinations are procedurally generated in that the overall layout of it is randomly spun up based on a number of tile sets, but within those tile sets, Ghost Story Games have built a number of sockets into which unique art assets can be plugged, new enemies can be placed, and new rewards can be offered. So far, based on the first 5 hours, this stuff seems to be working because I was genuinely very surprised to learn how much of what I had just experienced was procedurally generated. It still felt very curated and handcrafted. Maybe 5 hours wasn't enough for me to see these patterns emerging, as is often the case with procedural generation in other games, but so far, so good, and I'm interested to see how well this system holds up over time. One final element of the procedural model that Ken mentioned to us related to combat. Now, I didn't experience this for myself, but he is promising a responsive combat sandbox that reacts to your playstyle. So if the game can see that you're heavily reliant on stealth-style gameplay, the game will start to deliver combat scenarios where it's harder to stealth. That's a pretty ambitious goal, and I'd be really interested to see how that comes together because, like I said, I didn't play enough of the game to be able to see that for myself. So those are all the elements that Ken has lumped under his new expanded definition of what he calls narrative Lego. It's factional forces that open up or close off narrative pathways based on your standing with them, and it's a pseudo-procedurally generated world that is remixing both layouts and combat encounters to diversify your moment-to-moment gameplay. That stuff already sets Judas pretty far apart from Bioshock games. There's big differences in the combat sandbox as well. Bioshock games, particularly Infinite, were ultimately action games with a lot of running and gunning. Ammo flowed pretty freely, with Elizabeth literally tossing you ammo when you ran dry. There's plenty of enemies on screen at any point in time, and they all had plenty of health. These were action games. Judas is too, but in a very different way that is much less reliant on run and gun style play. First of all, resources are really limited. You have a melee ability and you will need to use it regularly because you're often trying to conserve ammo. Your powers only have a very limited number of charges and recharge kits for them are also scarce. There are fewer enemies in each combat arena, at least early on, and it's clear that the game wants you to think about how to deal with them rather than just blindly open fire. One way you might deal with them is stealth, which is a big part of Judas. You can crouch to move more slowly and instantly KO enemies with a melee if you can get behind them undetected. The other thing you might do is hack your enemies. This requires consumables and it has a clever sort of if this then that setup. So in the gameplay you're seeing here, the player hacked one of these deputies and then asked it to target the nearest organic foe before kamikazing. In this other hacking clip, the player deactivated one of these little train dudes while also making it vent its oil, allowing you to set that on fire. So yeah, it does feel different to play Judas because the combat sandbox is giving you options, but more importantly, it's limiting your resources so you have to utilize these options. This resource economy is very linked to the last unique feature of Judas, and that's the fact that it's a roguelite. During your playthrough, you will die, and when you do that, you lose all of your stuff, your weapons, your ammo, etc. At that point, you spawn into a secret location that I won't spoil, but I will say that there's a meta-narrative unfolding here over and above what's going on board the Mayflower. When you die, that narrative unfolds bit by bit, so it's sort of like Hades or God of War Ragnarok Valhalla, where death is an important part of moving that story forward. It's also a space where you're going to be able to unlock permanent or temporary buffs for your future runs, so it does offer that roguelite meta progression that means you don't lose everything when you die. But progress on the Mayflower is this tension between crafting resources you'll need to sustain you, like ammo or ability charges, versus crafting permanent upgrades like weapon add-ons or a new type of hacking chip. So you load in at the start of a new run with no resources, and then you go around collecting various types of crafting currencies, and you need to decide how and where you're going to spend them. That's what makes all of this hang together. The knowledge that you don't have enough ammo to just shoot everything, so you need to be smart with how you approach combat, combined with the need to carefully collect and utilize crafting components for both your immediate and your long-term needs. So when I think about Judas as I experienced it, I see three things. Firstly, it is, in no small part, Bioshock in space. It does have a familiar narrative setup and visual language, plus you're holding a gun with one hand and a power in the other, etc. Secondly, it's the narrative Lego stuff that aims to deliver both a responsive narrative owing to the big three, as well as a diverse gameplay experience owing to the pseudo-procedural generation affecting level layout and combat encounters. Finally, it's a roguelite that offers both meta progression and meta narrative, while also delivering a combat sandbox that is far more reliant on resource management than it is straight up action. So that's why I don't think this is just Bioshock in space, in inverted commas. I think it's trying to do some new things. How well all of that comes together, I don't know. It's one thing for Ken to promise these things, it's another thing entirely for him to actually deliver them in a final product. I will say though, that 5 hours in, a lot of what was promised was there. Ken had made clear that this is a much bigger game than anything he's done in the past, and I can totally see that because after 5 hours, I'd only unlocked a very small fraction of the weapons and power upgrades that I knew existed, and it really did feel as though the story was just getting warmed up. I can see this stretching well past the 15 hours we typically expect from a Bioshock game, so it definitely remains to be seen how well Ken's vision is able to coalesce across the full runtime of the game. But that's it, that's Judas. There's no release date for it yet, and Ken did make clear that it was still very much in development. He wasn't even willing to rule in or rule out a release year. He wants to keep building it until he feels it's ready, and that sounds like a pretty good approach to building games if you ask me. That's it. If you want to learn more about it, I really do recommend checking out our full conversation with Ken, link below. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time. At this point, you might have heard of this video's sponsor, Eureka Ergonomic. They have a huge range of unique and stylish furnishings to personalize your home, from sleek ergonomic home office stuff to elegant designer-crafted living room pieces to rare and artistic paraphernalia decorations and displays. Eureka Ergonomic always mix form and function to deliver impressive furniture for the modern home. I have a bunch of Eureka Ergonomic stuff at this point. Their curio display cabinet is wonderful and lets me showcase some of my favorite collectibles. Their smart coffee table is actually incredible because it's got a fridge inside it. This thing is like my favorite piece of furniture, but the Eureka piece that served me the best is this one, the Aero standing desk. This is the desk that both Austin and I use because not only does it look great, but it's brilliantly designed, full of really useful features. The wing-shaped design provides a surrounding environment that's perfect for ease of access to your devices and provides ergonomic viewing angles for multiple monitors, while also creating a unique visual style for your workspace. It has shelves you can adjust to different positions, holders for your mobile devices, headphones, cups, and your keyboard and mouse, not to mention a stealthy cable management system for a super clean look. It's also just extremely sturdy and reliable. The heavy metal frame makes the desk extremely stable even at high standing heights, and the advanced dual motor system with memory presets lifts the desk smoothly, evenly, and quietly, supporting a height range of between 29 and 48 inches. It comes in your choice of color, either black, white, or my personal favorite, the walnut finish. Honestly, if you haven't got a standing desk yet and you spend a fair amount of time at your computer, I really strongly recommend getting one, for real. All of the bells and whistles aside, it's really good for you to be able to stand up intermittently and keep working or playing. Take care of your back and it will take care of you. You know what else is taking care of you though? Eureka Ergonomic, because right now you can get the Aero standing desk for 30% off by clicking the link in the description or the pinned comment. There's no discount code, so be sure to click that link to get that discount. It'll take you to eurekaergonomic.com/skillup. That's 30% off the Aero standing desk, and be sure to check out the rest of Eureka's impressive range while you're there. Thanks Eureka Ergonomic for sponsoring the video, and thank you for watching it.